Hello, and welcome to Know Before You Go, a program of the Dominican Central Province of St. Albert the Great that allows us to take a look ahead at the upcoming weekend's readings. I am Father Jim Marchionda, preacher and composer, at the end of my sabbatical year, so I have returned to Chicago, and I am happy to be with you as we approach the 12th Sunday in Ordinary Time. Now, I have to tell you, as I studied the readings and prepared for this preaching, two songs kept coming to me that I think totally reflect the three readings that you are going to hear in church this weekend. The first song is How Can I Keep From Singing? And has to do with the first reading from the book of Job and the Gospel of Mark. And the second song is the old spiritual Jesus in the Morning that has to do with St. Paul's second letter to the Corinthians. As you know, the first refrain, How Can I Keep From Singing, goes like this. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love is Lord of heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? As I said, that refrain has to do with both the first reading from the book of Job and the Gospel of Mark. Now, the reading from Job is going to sound a little bit strange when you first hear it, because we don't hear all the history that led up to this particular dialogue between Job and God. Job is going through all kinds of suffering. You know that story. And he's now questioning God. Why is this happening? Do you not have power to change these things? And so what you're going to hear is God's answer. God's answer is, do you not know that I control the seas? I have defined the seas. I have designed the clouds. I have set limits on the seas and on the clouds. I have controlled all the elements. What are you doing asking me if I don't have control? Of course I do. Of course I do. And just in that answer, what we are hearing is the incomprehensibility of God, which should set limits on how much we attribute to God, the incomprehensibility of God, as well as the incomprehensibility of suffering. That let us not so think we know our suffering as to blame God for it. Whether or not our turbulence in suffering continues, you and I are invited by that reading to trust that God knows what God is doing, and that in the end, God has charge over us. The Gospel of Mark is the familiar story of Jesus and the disciples being out on the boat when a squall comes up. They're being tossed about like crazy. Water is going over the side of the little boat, and it's starting to fill up. And they're terrified, and Jesus is sleeping. I've been in a squall. I've been in the Caribbean when a squall came up upon a large kind of boat that I was in, and we bounced all over. How could Jesus have been sleeping? Except for God intentionally wanting to teach a lesson. So he doesn't wake up until they say, don't you even care that we are in such danger and we could perish here? We could lose our lives? Jesus wakes up, yells at the storm, tells it to be quiet, to be still. Everything stops. And then he turns to them and he said, why were you terrified? Why were you terrified? Don't you have faith? And then the gospel ends with they're just saying, oh, who is this that even commands the sea and the wind, and they obey him? I think that was the wrong question. If they just focused on Jesus, it was the wrong question unless it leads back to the question he asked them. Don't you have faith? Why were you so terrified? Don't you know that I am with you and that I am here? So we are challenged by this gospel through our own storms to believe through the toughest of times and to trust that Jesus is always with us. That's what leads to my second song. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus in the morning, Jesus at the noontime, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus when the sun goes down. That is what we receive from St. Paul's second letter to the Corinthians, where he reminds us that Christ died for all. And so we no longer live for ourselves, but for Christ. That we are now a new creation in Christ. The old order has passed away, and new things have come. So Jesus in the morning, Jesus at the noontime, Jesus when the sun goes down. That Jesus is the rock that how can I keep from singing is talking about. Since love is Lord of heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? My friends, I believe these readings for the 12th Sunday of Ordinary Time give us great opportunities to think about our own suffering. Sometimes, like Job, we're tempted to say, I'm suffering, God is nowhere near. God must not hear my prayers. God is letting me flounder. And we hear God answer Job just like God would answer us. Come on. I've created the entire universe. Do you think I am not aware of you? And in the gospel, we have Jesus taking that message of God's, drawing it to himself, and saying, why do you ever become terrified? I am with you. Let us hear the lesson given to the disciples today. And let us think about our own sufferings and make that lesson our own, trusting it with all our hearts. God bless you.